It was the kind of morning I had once loved to wake up to. A pale Austin sunrise poured through the blinds of my small condo, the cicadas already buzzing in the distance. I had risen before dawn, dressed in my best navy blue dress, and carefully carried a cake I had ordered from a boutique bakery on South Congress. Chocolate layered with fresh strawberries, her favorite since childhood. The price tag of $180 was steep for a woman living on a modest pension. But for my only daughter, Melissa, nothing had ever felt too expensive. Driving north along Mopac toward her neighborhood, my hands trembled on the steering wheel, but my heart was light. Today was Melissa's 44th birthday. I imagined her smile when she opened the door, the way her eyes used to glow like fireworks on 4th of July when she was little. I had rehearsed the words in my mind. Happy birthday, my love. I brought your favorite. I parked outside the 2-story house I had helped finance nearly a decade ago. $120,000, pulled from my retirement savings, had made this place possible. I remembered her tears of joy when I handed her the check, telling her, every mother's dream is to see her child in a home of her own. I thought about that moment as I walked up the stone path, clutching the bakery box. I knocked gently. My lips stretched into a hopeful smile. The door swung open, but instead of joy, there was only a frown. Melissa's face, perfectly made up, twisted with annoyance. Oh, it's you, she muttered, not even meeting my eyes. I froze, smile faltering. Happy birthday, sweetheart, I whispered, lifting the cake so she could see the candles already set in place. Chocolate with strawberries, just like when you were a girl. She sighed, a long, heavy breath that made me feel as though my presence were an unbearable weight pressing down on her. Mom, we need to talk. Inside, the living room gleamed with furniture I had partly paid for. Walls painted a soft beige. I lowered myself onto the edge of the sofa, still clutching the cake like a shield. Melissa remained standing, arms crossed, her eyes colder than I had ever seen them. I've been thinking a lot about birthdays, she began, her voice stripped of warmth, about gifts, about what would make me happiest. I leaned forward eagerly, desperate to please. Of course, darling. Tell me, a trip, jewelry, maybe that car you mentioned last month? She looked directly at me, her mouth curving into something between a smirk and disdain. The best gift you could give me, Mom, she said slowly, savoring each syllable, is to just die. The words sliced through me like glass. For a heartbeat, the world stopped. I clutched the cake tighter, feeling the candles begin to sag, the frosting smearing under my trembling fingers. My daughter, my only child, had just wished me dead. Back at my small condo in East Austin, the silence felt heavier than the Texas summer heat pressing through the windows. I set the cake box on the counter. Its once sweet promise, now just a cruel reminder, and collapsed into the worn armchair by the window. My hands shook as I pulled an old shoebox from the cabinet, a box I had filled over the years with receipts, bills, and letters. Proof, though I never thought I would need it. Proof of everything I had given. One by one, I unfolded the slips of paper, each carrying a memory. When Melissa was 4 and pneumonia nearly stole her breath, I sold my wedding ring for $1,000 to pay for medicine. I can still see the way her tiny chest heaved as I held her through the night. That receipt lay in my hand like a scar. Another slip, dated when she was 16. For $800, the pink prom dress she begged for. I worked 3 weekends in a row at the hospice ward to afford it. Her eyes had sparkled brighter than the sequins as she twirled in the mirror, whispering, "Thank you, Mom. You're the best." I believed those words. Then came the college years. $40,000 in tuition fees, scattered across multiple statements, She switched majors 3 times. Each change, another financial blow. But I never complained. I took out a second mortgage, telling her, "Your education is the most important thing." The wedding, how could I forget? $28,000 for the ballroom, she said, would make her feel like a princess. I signed checks until my hand ached, watching her glide down the aisle, certain I had bought her happiness. And the house. My chest tightened as I lifted the papers, showing the $120,000 I poured into the down payment for that suburban dream. My retirement savings, gone in a single gesture of love. The list went on. $14,000 for the twins' braces. $16,000 covering mortgage payments. When David lost his job. $10,000 more in birthday parties and Christmas gifts. I stacked the papers in neat piles, my breath coming in ragged gasps. Then I began to add. $200,000 raising her. $40,000 for school. $28,000 for the wedding. $120,000 for the house. $16,000 for emergencies. $14,000 for the braces. And gifts. Countless gifts. The total rose before me, like a mountain I had climbed on my knees, over $400,000. Nearly $500,000 poured out of my veins. Years of labor and sacrifice. If I had put that money in a savings account, I would be living in comfort now. Not in this cramped apartment counting pennies. Instead, I invested it all in love, and my return was a birthday wish for my death. At 3 a.m, lying awake, staring at the cracked ceiling, the grief hardened into something else. Not hatred. Not yet. But clarity. If Melissa wanted me gone, then I would grant her wish. Just not in the way she expected. The next morning, I woke with the kind of clarity I had not felt in years. The sun rose over Austin, spilling gold across the blinds of my tiny condo, and I knew exactly what I had to do. My daughter wanted me to disappear. Very well. But before I vanished, I would take back everything she believed she owned of me. I dressed in my best blouse and skirt, the ones I used to wear for important hospital meetings, and walked to my car with steady hands. My first stop was the downtown branch of the bank. The teller, a young man who had known me for years, greeted me warmly. "Mrs. Hayes, how can we help you today?" "I'd like to close the joint account ending in 3,942, I said, sliding my id across the counter. His brows furrowed. "That account has $15,000 in it." "Are you sure?" I looked him dead in the eye, my voice calm but firm. "Transfer it to my personal account immediately." With the sweep of a pen, I reclaimed money I had once set aside for Melissa's emergencies. A flicker of satisfaction burned in my chest. Next, I drove to the mortgage office in Travis County, where the receptionist led me to a conference room. A loan officer laid out the thick folder of documents. "As co-signer," she explained, "you are legally responsible if the primary borrowers default. But it also means you have legal standing if payments become irregular. Last year, you covered 8 months when David lost his job. That alone establishes a record of instability." I tapped the page with a finger that no longer trembled. "Keep a copy ready. If they miss again, I want to exercise my rights." Her eyes widened slightly. "Are you sure you want to take such a step against your own daughter?" I smiled without warmth. She made it clear, I am no longer her mother. I am merely her safety net. That net is gone. By afternoon, I was sitting in the oak-paneled office of my old friend and lawyer, Arthur Green. He had known my late husband, had seen me through the hardest years of widowhood. When I told him Melissa's exact words that her birthday wish was my death, he leaned back in his chair, his expression tightening. "Julieta. I mean, Clara," he corrected himself gently. "I never imagined she could be so cruel." "Neither did I," I whispered. "But I want to make changes. All of them." For 2 hours, we combed through documents. My will, my life insurance, my pension. Everything that bore Melissa's name was erased. My savings would now go to the Austin Women's Shelter, a place I had volunteered at in my younger years. A trust would be established for my grandchildren, but locked until they turned 25. I even instructed Arthur to cancel the health insurance policy I had been quietly paying on Melissa's behalf. As I signed the final page, a strange relief flooded me. My hands no longer shook. My heart no longer begged for her approval. Melissa believed she had buried me with her words. She had no idea the woman she buried was already gone. In her place stood someone new, someone ready to reclaim her life. One signature at a time. By the time Friday evening settled over East Austin, I had mapped out every step of what I would do next. The ache in my chest from Melissa's cruelty was still there, but it had hardened into something sharper, something that could cut through fear. I was done being her servant. If she wished me gone, then gone, I would be, but on my own terms. I knocked on the door of my neighbor Irene, a 68-year-old retired teacher who had lived across the hall from me for nearly a decade. Irene had seen me leave at all hours to babysit Melissa's twins. She had watched me haul grocery bags filled with organic snacks for a family that never once invited me to sit at their table. She knew my story, even without the details. She welcomed me in with a mug of chamomile tea, and I told her everything. Every bitter word Melissa had spat at me, every sacrifice I had listed in my letter, every plan I was making. Her lips pressed into a firm line, her gray eyes blazing. "That child doesn't deserve you," Irene said firmly. "But if you want my help, you'll have it." I slid a sealed envelope across her table. Inside is the letter. 20 pages. Receipts, numbers, copies of the legal changes Arthur helped me with. I need you to deliver it when the time is right. You'll be the one to discover that I've disappeared. Irene leaned back, studying me. "You want me to play the part of the worried friend?" "Yes. You'll tell Melissa you noticed I hadn't answered the phone for days, that you used the spare key I gave you years ago, and you found my apartment empty. You'll hand her the envelope. Let her read the truth in black and white." Irene smiled sadly. After everything she's done, this might be the only way she'll ever understand what she lost. That night, I pulled out my laptop and searched for travel agencies that catered to retirees. One ad caught my eye, a New Life Abroad special programs for seniors in Portugal. The word Portugal stirred something in me. I had once seen a postcard of Lisbon's riverfront, golden light spilling over tiled streets. I picked up the phone and dialed. "Good evening," a cheerful voice answered. "This is Luso Horizons Travel. How may I assist you?" "I'd like to book a one-way ticket to Lisbon," I said, my voice steady, "and a furnished apartment for at least a month." When the agent confirmed the booking out of Austin Bergstrom for the following Tuesday, a wave of anticipation swept over me. For the first time in decades, my money was being spent not on Melissa's whims, but on my own freedom. Later that night, I sat at my desk and reread the letter. The final line burned like a brand across the page. "Your life will be easier without me, but it will also be much more expensive." I folded it carefully, sealed the envelope, and placed it on Irene's counter. My bags were half-packed already. The woman Melissa thought she owned was nearly gone. Soon, she would discover what it meant to truly lose me. Tuesday morning arrived, still and heavy, as if Austin itself knew I was leaving. At 5 o'clock, Irene knocked on my door, carrying a thermos of coffee and the steady calm of someone who had taught generations of children how to stand tall. My suitcases were already lined up by the door. She hugged me tightly. "Are you ready for your great escape?" she whispered. "More than ready," I said. And for once it was true. The cab driver loaded my bags as dawn painted the sky faint orange over Ladybird Lake. As we drove down I-35 toward the airport, I looked out at the city. I had poured my life into hospitals where I had worked double shifts, parks where I had chased Melissa as a child. The very skyline I had once believed held my family's future. None of it held me anymore. At Austin Bergstrom Airport, I passed through security with surprising ease. When the boarding call echoed through the gate, my heart skipped. As I settled into my seat by the window, the engines roared, and I whispered to myself, "This is the sound of freedom." The 12-hour journey to Lisbon felt both endless and liberating. I wrote in my journal, each word a small act of reclamation. She wished me dead. I chose to live instead. By the time the plane landed, twilight had fallen over Portugal. A young man from the travel agency greeted me with a placard that read Mrs. Conde Hayes. He guided me to a furnished apartment overlooking the Tagus River, with tiled floors and wide windows that breathed the scent of salt and jasmine. That first night, I treated myself to something I had never dared, a silk scarf in deep crimson, $100 paid in cash. It was soft, unnecessary, and entirely mine. Back in Austin, Irene stepped into her role. On Wednesday afternoon, she used the spare key to enter my empty condo. She placed the 20-page letter squarely on the kitchen table, then called Melissa. "I am worried," she told her. "Your mother hasn't answered in days." I checked her apartment. She's gone. All she left was this letter. Melissa's panic exploded like thunder. Within hours, my phone buzzed with frantic calls from the familiar 512 area code. First messages pleaded, "Mom, please call me. This isn't funny." Then came irritation. "Where are you? You can't just disappear." By the third day, fury, "You're ruining us. You can't do this." I let the phone vibrate on the nightstand, my eyes fixed on the golden river beyond the window. Each unanswered ring felt like a chain snapping loose. Melissa had wanted me gone. Now she would learn what life without me truly meant. For the first time in 45 years, I slept soundly, unburdened by anyone's demands but my own. By the 4th week in Lisbon, I was beginning to feel settled. My mornings started with walks along the Tagus River, the cool breeze carrying away decades of exhaustion. For the first time since my retirement, I woke up without dread. Yet peace has a way of drawing out old storms. One Wednesday afternoon, the phone rang with a number I didn't recognize. "Mrs. 1. Clara Hayes?" a woman asked. Her tone clipped but polite. "Yes, this is she." "My name is Angela Carter. I am a social worker with Family Services in Travis County. Your daughter has filed a complaint regarding your well-being." The words froze me. A complaint? About what? She expressed concern that you may be suffering from cognitive decline, that you've made reckless financial decisions, and that you may be living in unsafe conditions abroad. She requested our intervention. My chest tightened. Melissa had gone from wishing me dead to trying to erase my sanity on paper. "Mrs. Carter," I said firmly. "I am living in Portugal by choice. I am in excellent health, both physically and mentally. My daughter's accusations are baseless." "I understand. But for due diligence, well, need an evaluation through the American consulate in Lisbon. It's standard procedure." "Schedule it," I answered. My voice didn't tremble. The following week, I walked into the consulate's cream-colored building, where an American doctor conducted a thorough 3-hour examination. He asked about memory, problem-solving, financial decisions, even my reasons for relocating. At the end, he leaned back, studying me with sharp, kind eyes. "Mrs. Hayes, not only are you sound of mind, but your choices demonstrate clarity. Your daughter's claims appear to be attempts at control, not genuine concern. I will file my report accordingly." Relief flooded me. Within days, the social worker called back. "Mrs. Hayes. The evaluation confirmed you are in full possession of your faculties. We are closing the case. Please be aware, your daughter's false complaint has been documented in our system. I thanked her, hung up, and immediately dialed Arthur Green, my attorney back in Austin. She accused me of dementia. Arthur, I told him, she's trying to undo everything I've set in place. Arthur sighed. She's overplayed her hand. We can file for defamation, given the official report clears you. Her credibility is crumbling. For years I had been terrified of losing Melissa's love. Now I realized she feared losing my money. That fear was driving her into darker corners of manipulation. That night, I sat on my Lisbon balcony, the bells of the old city chiming in the distance. I poured a glass of Vinho Verde and whispered to myself, she wanted me erased. Instead, I am stronger than ever. Melissa thought she could drag me back by questioning my mind. What she never understood was that for the first time in decades, my mind was finally free. 6 months had passed since that brutal birthday in Austin, and the ripple effects of my disappearance were finally crashing down. I was sipping coffee in a Lisbon cafe overlooking the river when my phone lit up with a familiar name, Arthur Green. Clara, he said, his voice low but steady. The foreclosure went through last week. The bank officially reclaimed Melissa and David's house. For a moment, I closed my eyes. I had walked those very halls after wiring my life savings for the down payment. Now, the place stood as a monument to their greed. Repossessed and auctioned off? What happens to them now? I asked. They've moved into a small rental off Riverside in Austin. 2 bedrooms. Barely enough space for the twins. David found work at a warehouse, and Melissa took a part-time job at a local salon. For the first time, they're paying every bill themselves. And Clara, he paused, letting the words sink in, you've recovered your $150. 000 investment with interest. A wire transfer of $185. 000 will arrive in your Swiss account by Monday. I set my cup down, my hands trembling not from sadness, but from a strange, fierce relief. What I had once considered lost forever had returned, stronger. That afternoon, Irene called from Austin. Clara, you wouldn't believe it, she said, her voice sharp with satisfaction. Melissa showed up at my door, sobbing. She said she finally understands what she's lost. She begged me to tell you to come back. And what did you say? I asked, bracing myself. I told her some wounds never close, and some words can't be unsaid. That even if you did return, you'd never be the same mother she once knew. I reminded her that she told you to die. Her face, Clara, it went white as chalk. I pressed the phone closer. Did she mention the money? Oh, yes. She cried about the mortgage, about the twins needing school supplies, about not knowing how to manage without you. But never once did she admit she was cruel. Never once did she say she loved you. That night, I walked along the Alfamas cobblestone streets, lanterns flickering above me. I thought about Melissa in that cramped apartment in Austin, stripped of luxury, stripped of the illusion that her mother would always rescue her. It wasn't joy. I felt it was justice. For decades, I had been their safety net. They believed I would bend forever. But when I cut the cords, they had to fall. And in that fall, perhaps, they might finally learn. I lifted my face to the Lisbon night sky and whispered, you wished me gone. Melissa, now you see what life is without me. And for the first time, the words tasted like freedom, not grief. 1 year after I left Austin, I sat on the balcony of my Lisbon apartment, watching the sunrise paint the Tagus River gold. The air smelled of coffee and sea salt, and for the first time in decades, I felt whole. My lawyer's call had confirmed it. Between the foreclosure, recovery, and the sale of my Austin condo, My accounts now held over $500,000. At 73, I was wealthier than ever, not just in money, but in peace. Still, my thoughts drifted to Melissa. I imagined her waking in that cramped rental off Riverside, juggling bills, hearing her children ask why Grandma didn't visit anymore. Maybe she told them I was stubborn. Maybe she told them nothing at all. But I knew the truth. Words have consequences. And her birthday wish had burned a bridge that could never be rebuilt. What struck me most wasn't the cruelty of her words, but how easily she had said them. The best gift would be if you just died. She hadn't hesitated. For years, I mistook dependency for love, manipulation for closeness. In reality, I had raised a woman who valued my wallet more than my presence. The revelation was bitter, but it gave me freedom. For too long, I had lived as if my only worth was what I could give others. By walking away, I discovered the life I had delayed: painting classes twice a week, hikes with other expatriates, dinners filled with laughter, untainted by demands. Sometimes, when the bells of Lisbon's old churches rang, I whispered to myself, "Clara Hayes, you survived your own funeral." Because, in a way, Melissa killed the mother she thought she owned the moment she asked me to vanish. And in that death, I found a rebirth. The greatest twist wasn't that I disappeared. It was that disappearing gave me back my life. So here is my lesson. For anyone listening, love is not measured by sacrifice alone. If your love is treated like currency, spent until you're empty, then it is no longer love, it is exploitation. A parent's duty is to raise their children, but it is not to become their endless supply of money, time, and self-worth. I am living proof that it is never too late to choose yourself, to walk away, to start over, even at 73. As I raised my glass of Vinho Verde to the Lisbon sunset, I smiled. Melissa had wished for my disappearance, and she got it, only not in the way she imagined. I disappeared from her world, yes, but I reappeared in my own. And that, at last, was the best gift I could ever give myself. Looking back, I realized that the cruelest words I ever heard, my own daughter wishing for my death, were also the spark that saved me. They forced me to see the truth. I had given everything, but love without respect is not love at all. By walking away, I discovered that my worth is not measured by the money I spend or the sacrifices I make, but by the dignity I choose to protect. It took me 73 years to understand that sometimes the bravest act a mother can take is to stop being used and start living for herself. Today, I wake up each morning free, at peace, and finally, proud of the life I built for me. What about you? What lesson do you take from my story? And from which city are you watching? Share your thoughts in the comments. I'd love to hear them.